Hey everyone, welcome back to the next podcast of Rupees Over Ramen, the show where we talk about animation, creativity, the creative process, and tons of other nerdy stuff. I'm super excited today to be talking about the movie Luca and to have my cousin Nolan here with me today, aka Top Hat Toast. If
Hello.
you've seen some old YouTube videos with me and them playing games.
Yeah, in the day.
Yeah. And I think I'll just drop a link in the description to that channel if you want to check it out.
And Twitch.
Nolan likes to live stream, so we'll drop a little link to his Twitch and
Yeah,
down in there too.
Come follow me. I'm trying to get, was it affiliate?
Yeah, affiliate. So he's
affiliate.
working towards that right now.
Trying to get to
His
affiliate.
streams are nice and toasty.
Toasty.
So with Luca, it was directed by Enrico Casarosa, and he was the one that directed La Luna. I don't know if you ever saw that short. It's the one where the little kid, his grandpa, and like his dad, and they're all going up to like this moon to pick up all these stars, and they all pick them up differently. This is like this short film.
Not sound familiar.
Yeah.
No.
It's a very interesting style that he does, and he kind of worked that into Luca, which was really cool, because you look at Luca, it's totally different style than a lot of other Pixar movies. It's not like that classic Pixar style. It's slightly different. So starting with the first part, animation and look development, something that I found really interesting is that this look was inspired by Japanese 2D animation or anime. It's not like an obvious thing.
I feel like the characters definitely are like Pixar characters, but kind of the backgrounds and the like world building is a little bit different than
Yeah.
traditional.
Yeah, and when they were working on this, they wanted to kind of go back in time a little bit to the Japanese wood print style of like very simplified backgrounds and water and things like that. So it was really cool getting to see that. It was really interesting reading about it too, because the animators were so used to making these super realistic environments, and Enrico would come by and be like, "No, you gotta simplify that.
It's too real. It's too real. Stop.
Stop. Bring it back. So kind of a background on Enrico. He grew up in the 1980s watching Japanese animation, and
Well, me too. I mean, not 80s.
and he really liked Japanese animation and just that inspirational look that it had and that watercolor in the backgrounds. So he kind of wanted to work that into this, taking parts of his childhood, which the story is actually based on his childhood, by the way. We'll be talking a little bit more about that later in the episode.
He wanted a Vespa.
He wanted that Vespa. So I just wanted to start with like a quote, and this is from Luca's director of photography, or like the DP as they call it. He wanted it to still feel like a CG film, but you can sense the hand of the artist touching it. And I think that's really cool way of saying it, because I see that a lot with Hayao Miyazaki's films. It still feels super polished and stuff, but you can sense his hand there working in the characters and the backgrounds. And it's really cool if you look at those films, because if you look at him, he's a lot of times storyboarded the whole story before any writing is even done. Like these beautiful storyboards of the story. It's really cool. Another really interesting thing was this was 63 animators working on this film.
Is that a lot or is that not a lot?
It's a good amount. Like
Significant?
it's a pretty normal size for an
Okay.
animation team, at least what I've seen. And that's the interesting thing is there are like hundreds, thousands of people working on this, but when it comes to animators,
I mean, yeah, that's a lot.
yeah, that'd be overkill.
That would be like, or you're gonna animate one frame and then you're good. That's not even animating. That's just drawing.
Good job, man. Yeah, but one thing that was interesting is they had to train all of these animators in the style of this animation. Because for years they've been doing kind of the same style again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to train them in this new style of animation to get it looking perfect, making it look nice and pretty. So also with the look development, there's something really cool about this movie that I really liked was the transformation from sea monster to human. And
I was
back
about
and
to say,
forth.
that's like my favorite thing about the movie.
Yeah, it's just like done so beautifully, and I wanted to do some research into that and seeing how they did that. Something that's really interesting, just starting off with Pixar, is they seem to develop a new technology with each movie that they work on. Like with Finding Nemo, it was the water. With Monsters Inc., it was like fur on characters and stuff. They're always working on these new technologies and designing these new systems. And it goes back to how it kind of started, because Pixar started with like Steve Jobs and Apple. It was a very like software-based thing.
I didn't know it started with Apple.
Yeah, he was connected to it. He wasn't like the one that got it all started up,
Steve
but
Jobs, man behind the scenes.
he was connected to it. He's connected to everything.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, but this new technology with each movie was really cool. And the animation supervisor on this movie, Mike Venturini, I'm going to do my best on pronouncing these names.
I'm not even going to try.
So he was talking about transformation and how they've done it in previous films. And when I think of transformation, the one that like first comes to my mind is the transformation of the Beast to his human form.
Interesting. I thought of Little Mermaid.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
That's a good one too. Animation wise, especially with the Beast, it's this super intense, like so much work is put into it. Some people kind of call it like the holy grail of animation because it's just done so beautifully and so well. But it's time consuming, like, to do that. And they're like, we're gonna be having them transform again and again and again, and we do not want this time consuming thing. And of course with 3D starting out, it's usually a lot easier because you have assets and you have models that you can move and stuff, and the computer can do a lot for you. But still, it was really tough. So instead of a direct A to B character into sea monster, they created a transformation rig. And basically what they would do is they would take the character and turn the character invisible and lay that second character in on top of the first character, so they're occupying the same space, and make him invisible. So you just leave the feet, and then like it'll reveal the second character's feet as it's moving up with this cool transformation effect. And you could pick with this rig that they made how faded you wanted it to be, where you wanted transformation to happen, where water hit, or where you didn't want it to be. The animators and people working on this were like, when it was done, they're like, whoa, this is cool.
It is cool. It looks cool.
Yeah.
Like it looks really cool and it looks really well done. And it sounds like once you have the whole thing set up, it's not hard.
Yeah, once you have it all set up, it was just kind of figuring that out. And that's something that I love looking at with movies, was figuring it out. And I have an episode that we're going to be doing about Treasure Planet, where they figured out a lot with meshing 2D with 3D with some of the effects that they wanted.
Yeah, like what's the little bubble gum?
Morph.
Yeah, Morph.
Yeah, so they did some really cool things with that. I'm super excited to be talking about that later. But going back to this, the simulation supervisor on this was Henry Garcia, and he wanted to kind of move it further down the line, making it look even more magical and even more polished, I guess. Like, it looks, ooh, that's good. So he added in a magical wind that's going throughout the clothing as the transformation is happening. So it's indicating to the audience that something big is about to happen. Something that's really cool with this is a principle in animation. It's called anticipation. And you've probably seen it in like old animated shows and stuff. It's like when someone rears back their fist about to punch someone, and it's just super like the old cartoons where it's just super emphasized.
Winding the fist bit.
Yeah. That's the anticipation. And that's what they're kind of showing here, is they would have this like magical wind come through, and you're like, okay, the audience is like, something is about to happen.
Dude, I'm gonna have to rewatch the movie after this so I can like actually notice these things, because I haven't done all the research that you've done. So like, I just watched the movie once, like when it came out, and I was like, that was a good movie. You know, you're like, analysis.
Yeah, and this is one thing that I really like, that I'm excited about the show, is to have different people on and to get their thoughts about the movies, because there's so much that goes on behind the scenes of these movies. It's just like amazingly beautiful.
Yeah, I'm very much a casual consumer of animation. But, like, this is still interesting.
Yeah.
I still find this very interesting. Glad to be on the podcast.
So. Yeah. And the other really interesting thing that they took 2 months to get on. Guess like what this might have been. It was something super crazy that they had to work on getting figured out.
I have no idea. That, like, the Vespa.
No. It was the pasta.
The pasta?
Yeah, they wanted to capture, they're like, this is an Italian.
Wait, so they spent 2 months to try and animate pasta.
And to get it looking right.
Okay.
Because as Luca and Alberto, as they're eating the pasta, they're eating it super fast. There's so much stuff with pasta. And they were like, this is an Italian movie. We cannot mess up the pasta. It has to be right. So they worked 2 months to get that look, the feel, and move it of the pasta to get those
quite
physics
a few
right.
scenes with pasta.
Yeah.
Like, there's every time they ate pasta in that, what's her face's house?
Yeah,
and then,
Julia.
Yeah, and then the pasta eating challenge. So
Yeah, it's just kind of crazy. But when you think about it, it's like every single noodle, like...
Yeah, I mean, if they're like... Oof. If they're like individually animating each noodle, I could see how that could take 2 months. Like that sounds boring, honestly.
And just, I think it was a lot of just setting up the physics to be right, and like
that makes sense. Because like in today's like animation, a lot of times it's like letting the computer do what it does, but you have to make sure it does it the right way.
Because you tell the computer what to do, and it's going to do it exactly as you're telling it. So that can be a good thing. It can also be a bad thing.
Yeah. So it's not like individually positioning each noodle in each frame.
Yeah.
More of like setting the right parameters so the physics engine works properly.
Yeah. I wanted to also kind of talk with the look development of this town. They kind of chose this like seaside town of Porto Rosso, which I thought was super funny because of like the Ghibli movie Porco Rosso.
Oh.
It's like, oh.
Was that like intentional? Or did that just kind of...
I'm not really sure. I kind of like looked into it a little bit, and there's two towns that they kind of mix. We're going to be talking about that later, of Porto Venire and Monterosso, which kind of make Porto Rosso.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But people think there may have been...
little Porco Rosso in
there. Yeah, like let's be honest. There's so many Ghibli fans out there. Like, have you seen, just off on a little tangent, Breath of the Wild? I played Breath of the Wild, and then I watched Princess Mononoke for the first time. I was like, oh my, this is the same story. Like, what's going on? Like, the main character is like wearing blue, and they changed Link to wear blue in Breath of the Wild. And then in the new Breath of the Wild, they have the whole cursed hand thing. Like, his arm has been filled with darkness and dark power. That's what happens to what's his face in Princess Mononoke. His hand becomes like poison. The darkness.
The darkness.
But anyways, back to Luca. These areas of Porto Rosso, he wanted them to be towns stuck in time. And it was kind of going back to where he grew up in Spanish childhood. Because in Italy, every summer he grew up in Italy, and every summer he would go to a small port town and spend the summer there. Yeah. So it's really interesting. Because I was thinking about how like you have the British going on holiday, and you have Italians going to like their little port towns. You have Americans usually going to the beach or to the mountains. It's interesting. But this story was based on kind of his childhood and his summer experience. So part 2, we're going to be talking about story, characters, and the cast. And it kind of revolves around this idea that Luca is discovering the power of exploring and celebrating another culture while learning to honor and share his own with others. And you see that kind of throughout the movie. They do it in a different way where it's like sea monsters and humans, but they are totally different cultures.
Yeah.
And I think something was really cool with that is they really showed that these could be believable cultures and peoples like living in the same place, kind of contrast to each other. So the other thing they wanted to work on was the message of friendship and acceptance of yourself as well as others. And sea monsters are kind of that metaphor. Like with Luca, he's trying to accept himself as a sea monster, and with Alberto, he's trying to accept his father's gone, and he has to kind of find out who he is on his own, and he has to have confidence in himself and who he is, to not try to be something
real
he's
confidence.
not.
I mean, he has confidence.
Yeah.
He also doesn't. He's definitely got some problems.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. So there's really this emotional richness from the animators, the people working on the film. They're all kind of putting in their childhood stories into these stories, and it was just really cool.
So were like other people and like the director putting in their like...
Yeah, and it's really interesting because sometimes
was there more people from Italy, or like was it just like general?
I think there were some more people from Italy, because it seems like Pixar and Disney, they've been trying to do where they work on these films, they have people from those cultures come and work on those films that are already on their team. And it's cool seeing that. And sometimes even subconsciously you can put in a little bit of your childhood into a story, especially when you're like an animator, because you're animating this thing and you might put in like a mannerism that you do or that your best friend does. And sometimes it's subconscious, sometimes it's conscious. Like this guy came and spoke to us. He worked on a lot of Disney movies, but one was Princess and the Frog, and Princess Naveen he based off of his college roommate, because his college roommate was always flirting with girls.
Man, I don't know why, but I hated that movie.
I didn't like that movie either. Like, don't hate me, guys, but
I don't know why, but like I haven't seen it since I was like like it first came out.
It's been a while.
I just remember when I watched it, I was like, I didn't really enjoy that movie.
Yeah,
but also like when I was like 12-year-old boy, I wasn't.
Yeah,
like,
it's true.
Princess movies.
Yeah, princess movie. But yeah, people working on the film kind of sharing.
So how much like creative freedom do like individual animators get?
That's an interesting question, and a lot of times when you're working in the industry, there's kind of like this stereotype of you're doing someone else's vision, you're doing someone else's thing.
Because you're just kind of like a grunt, right?
But someone can't totally control everything, especially when you're animating something, because how you move someone's hand or how you do a certain action, that's all you make that decision. Like they kind of give you an outline, but in the end you're the one trying to put in some emotion into that and trying to make it feel like it has life.
That makes sense.
So I think there's more creativity than people understand. There's also a lot of like things that are taken away from the creativity that need to be changed. I think overall it's been going pretty well with a lot of animated movies. You're able to have people kind of give their side of things, and I think it's worked pretty well. Well, let's talk about the main characters of this. So we have Luca and Alberto and Julia, and then Julia's father, Massimo. I loved his character.
I really liked his character as well. I didn't notice he was missing an arm until like they pointed it out, and I was like, wait, like what? Like I don't even remember what. Like it was at least like halfway through the movie, and I was like, oh, this dude's got one arm.
Yeah, I was watching with my friends, and they're like, didn't he have an arm before?
Exactly. I thought he had two arms, but no, it was just.
And it was interesting how at first he's like, yeah, I got bit by a sea monster, but then he's like, I was actually just born this way. It's interesting because a lot of times you can't control things. There's things that happen in your life, and you have to adapt. And he shows that really well. He's like best dad.
Yeah, he's really cool.
But some of the guys that gave these voices was Jacob Tremblay. He did the voice of Luca, and another emotional, misunderstood character that he did the boy in Wonder. If you've seen that movie, the kid that has the face disfiguration and he wears like the helmet.
Right, you told me about that. Yeah. I don't think I've seen that.
It's a really good movie, and I think Jacob's really good at capturing these emotionally deep characters. Even though he's just a child actor, he's super good.
How old is he?
Less than 20. I know that.
Okay.
He's probably like 14 or 15 now.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's Alberto, Jack Dylan Grazer. And I was listening to this guy talk, and I was like, why does his voice sound so familiar? And I'm like, oh yeah, he must be this guy.
His name sounds familiar.
So we look it up, and it's not that guy. And I'm like, what the heck? What's going on? But I did realize his voice does kind of sound like Sokka's voice from Avatar: The Last Airbender. They're both named Jack.
Does he voice act any like significant character?
Not really. Not that like when
that
I was
like
looking
his
at
first,
he was like this new actor, and he's been in some like live action movies, I think, but he hasn't had super crazy roles in anything.
So who knows? Maybe this will like set off his career or something.
Yeah. I was like, dang, he could voice Sokka if need be. But I really love this idea of Alberto and his father, and kind of throughout the story, you learn more about that his father left him, and he's left to pick up the pieces and to figure this out.
Mm-hmm. Do you think his dad died or just left?
It seemed to me that his dad left him. He might have died later, but I think he
just like abandoned him.
Yeah, I think he abandoned him. Because he was kind of marking down on the wall where and how long it's been since he last saw his father.
Yeah, so it was like he still had hope that his dad would come back.
Yeah, but I think it's really cool seeing the father-son bond that develops between him and Massimo, and how it's also this super emotional thing because you're like, Massimo's like hunting.
He's hunting the sea monsters, and then he ends up treating them like his sons.
Yeah, and it's very deep. It's a really cool story. Kind of moving on.
Character development.
Yes, character development is so good. Luca is based off of Enrico's childhood. Luca's friendship with Alberto was actually based on Enrico's friendship with his friend Alberto. He didn't even change his name.
Oh, nice.
Kept it the same, yeah.
Dude, that would feel good to be like his friend. Be like,
yeah,
heck yeah, that character's based off of me.
You're like, yeah, I'm in that animated movie.
That's me right there.
It's really cool. And his friend really helped him to grow and helped him to kind of step out of his comfort zone and to just kind of become a man, I guess. I really love these stories of like coming of age stories because they're always done so emotionally deep. I'm going to keep saying that because it is. It's like there's all this stuff working into the story of each of these characters. Even just how they're animated and how they emote, like how they smile. You can see the kind of person and character that they are. So it's really cool. But kind of going into this story, Enrico spent his summers in the town of Genoa, Italy, on the coast, the seaside, and that's kind of what he based this story off of.
I've always wanted to live in like a seaside town.
I know, I see them like, and I'm
like in movies and like pictures. I'm like, dude, that's so cool.
It's so beautiful, especially how they layer the different houses.
Yeah, like when it's like layered like on a hill or something.
Yeah, and then you just have like the cobblestone going up through the town.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, that looks so cool. And then like I think about it, and I'm like, maybe that's not actually like the best lifestyle.
Yeah, because like
I like my cozy suburb lifestyle. It's kind
of could have like smelly fish, and there's a lot of stuff that you don't see or smell.
Those kinds of things are often romanticized in like media, but it's still cool. Like they do a good job, and it makes you want to live there. So
no, that's for sure. So the other person I kind of want to talk about was Uncle Hugo. So what did you think about this character? It was that translucent guy and his like heart stops.
Oh yeah,
and he's like, gotta punch his heart, gotta punch my heart.
He's like the like a deep sea monster.
Yeah.
He's creepy, but he was a pretty small character.
Yeah, he was a pretty small character.
I don't know. I mean, I thought he was cool. I thought his character design was cool.
Yeah,
it was like oh, like obviously he's in the deep because he's like translucent and stuff.
Yeah, and it's interesting because he's been there for so long that's had an effect on him. It's like you can see it in him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they talked about how the whole punching the heart thing was kind of like when your uncle or someone's like, hey, pull my finger. It's kind of like that type of thing, where it's just like this like joke thing that they wanted to work into it. But he's translucent, and people, when they were working on this, they wanted him to kind of be the antithesis of Luca's desires. Because Luca, he wants to go onto the land. He wants to experience,
be free,
all these things, and his uncle's just down in the deep, deep, deep darkness that he's never been to. And they kind of wanted it to be kind of like this almost type of boarding school thing. Like, it's like, oh no, it's time to send you to Uncle Hugo. And I think one thing it serves as an opposition, that he's like, okay, I gotta get out of here. I gotta do something different now.
Doesn't he run away after that?
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Massimo, then Julia, and then we'll be talking about the rest of the stuff in a later episode. But Julia, I thought it was a really cool character. She was outgoing. She loves to learn. But she doesn't, I didn't realize this, but in reading about it, she doesn't really believe in sea monsters. And,
really?
Yeah. And kind of like spoiler alert, but there's this moment in the movie where Alberto shows that he's a sea monster. And he does it in a very scary way. And she is truly like scared by that, because her whole life she's been kind of this intellect of, no, sea monsters can't exist. They don't exist. And then her best friend.
And like the whole like town is like, sea monsters are evil, kill all sea monsters.
Yeah.
So it's like she's got predetermined prejudice.
Oh yeah.
Against sea monsters already. So
yeah, it's really interesting. You have her, this little girl. She's like pretty fend for herself, and then you have her father. He's this big, gentle giant character, very kind-hearted, and he also becomes a father figure for Alberto. And I just found that really cool. This whole story that's developed throughout. I love these stories of kind of like these found families, where there are these people that are going through these tough things, and you don't think that they're going to end up being able to support and understand each other, but then it works out in the end. It reminds me a little bit of Howl's Moving Castle. I love the found family aspect of that. How you have like this wizard, he's done these things that he kind of regrets, and he's losing his humanity. You have this girl who's trying to show him that he's still human. He still has something to live for. And then you have like Turnip Head, and you have Calcifer, and you have the little dog, and you have shriveled up grandma lady.
And the kid, what was the kid's name?
His name's like it's not a very common name.
No, they don't. Yeah. And they don't use it much.
No, they don't use it much.
He's actually not shown very much.
No. But one of my favorite parts in that is when he like pulls the hood down.
Yeah, and turns into like Bearded Dwarf Man.
Bearded Dwarf Man.
Yeah.
It's so good. But yeah, we hope that you guys enjoyed this first part of the episode. We're going to be going in the next episode talking about the world building, music and sound design. That episode will be a little bit shorter, but it will be just as good. It'll be really awesome. And Nolan will be here for that one too.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're excited to see you guys then. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.